Well, hello, people of Defend the House, and welcome back to another episode of The Tower. This is the show where we rank some of the AAA games of the year against the rest of the AAA games of the year or the previous year.
Well, the original idea for The Tower, like a year ago, was, let's like stay on top of game releases and like maybe try to be a little more relevant in the like review conversation, if we want to put it that way.
I think my old intro was literally like, we're going to rank every major AAA game of the year. I think that was like the original mission objective, I think.
And I think pretty quickly we both realized that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
For me, Diablo 4 was the one where I'm like, oh, we can't do this.
Yeah, there was a bit of forcing with Final Fantasy 16 as well, where I probably wouldn't have played that game or maybe beaten that game if it wasn't for The Tower. But it's not just that. This has been like very prevalent in our recent podcast conversations. Something just happened to my brain this year. It was like a light switch got flipped, and I just lost a lot of interest in, I think, just the AAA gaming space in general. I can't really remember a time, at least from my perspective and in my opinion, where the AAA market has felt just so like repetitive and almost, it feels a little regressive, honestly. I feel like video games were always over time getting slightly better. Even if it was just from like a technological point of view, like games were just slowly getting better and better. And I just feel like that isn't happening in AAA gaming anymore. And again, that's all opinions and matter of perspective, but I don't know. I just feel like there hasn't been like any like slam dunk hits in quite a while when it comes to AAA gaming. And when I look back on how I felt about like Horizon and God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2, it could be rose-tinted glasses, but it just feels like the last like 2 or 3 years have just been, for me, a little bit, I don't know, it's just gone backwards a little bit. And the reason I loved AAA gaming was because it was the forefront and things were just like slowly snowballing, and it was fun from like a nerdy point of view from technology and the market getting like progressively better. And it just feels like I'm playing the same games over and over again, and my brain has just completely switched off from like wanting to keep up with it, really. And that's kind of, it hasn't been a problem anywhere else except for this like video show specifically, like The Tower, because the whole point was just playing all of the AAA games, and I haven't really wanted to play many of them unless they have something a little novel or strange going on within them. That's obviously why Dragon's Dogma 2...
Which is why we're here.
Exactly, that's why Dragon's Dogma 2 is here. And I'm still going to be interested in stuff like Death Stranding 2.
Sure.
Kind of struggling to come up with any like examples that are coming out this year.
Yeah, there's not a lot on the calendar right now anyways. That's the weird thing as well.
But yeah, in case people were into this little show, it's probably worth explaining why it's become a little bit uncommon and why it might continue to not pop up too often, because Joe's brain changed suddenly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big games have definitely become fairly stagnant in terms of what to expect from them. So I don't know. I think for The Tower, you know, we'll come together when we want to chat about a weird thing that we both played.
Yeah.
In this case, Dragon's Dogma 2. And, you know, sometimes those will be new games, and I think sometimes those won't be, and that's fine as well.
Also, we're just like not going to connect with those type of games compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
And this show will never be like for review purposes to like inspire people's purchasing choices. But I feel like Star Wars was a good example of like how far away we are when it comes to certain formats in video games. And I don't know if people will like want to hear us talk about things that we obviously aren't going to like connect with because we're bored of that formula, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I don't really want to like force myself to play things like that. Yeah, I think we'll just sort of treat The Tower like we just, you know, it's fun to talk about games and put them up on the channel in some form, because we've been doing that for so long.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. I don't really know. Like, I have no idea what the next thing we talk about is, and that's fine. But today, it's just a single video game to be discussed on this episode, and that's Dragon's Dogma 2.
Positively speaking.
Yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2. We didn't play the first game, which I think is worth saying because I did hear some people saying they were very similar, both games, in like flow and, the way they're structured. And I did see some people complain that there was like a lack of differences between both games, so probably worth saying we didn't play the first game because, obviously it makes it more novel for us going into the second game. But the first game looked old.
Yeah, and the first game when it came out seemed like an old, crazy person game 10 or 12 years ago, like when it was new. And I would say, actually, the second game is kind of that same way as well. But in a lot of ways, it sounds like, just from hearing people that play both games, it sounds like 2 is largely the same game, but just sort of better put together and better polished and not like falling apart at the seams quite as aggressively as the first game, even though there are definitely some rough seams in this game for sure, tech-wise. More than anything. Like, hello, people spawning in front of me. I would also say, I think this applies to both of us, neither of us were sure we were going to play this game until, like, pretty close to its release.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
It was the, I think it was the Mystic Spear Hand, like, gameplay trailer that I saw. I was like, oh, the combat actually looks, like, pretty cool.
I never even unlocked that class. Never even unlocked it.
I played almost the entire game as Mystic Spear.
I don't know where that is, but my playthrough was a little bit strange, which we'll get to at some point.
Okay, yeah. I don't know where to start with Dragon's Dogma 2.
I'll just jump in and say that I have mixed opinions about Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah, I was curious where you ended up with it.
Yeah, it's hard to just jump forward miles when it comes to my overall journey with Dragon's Dogma 2, because I have one major problem with the game, which kind of ruined the entire thing for me. Playthrough-wise, I wouldn't say ruined my entire experience. I still had some really cool moments and experiences with this game, but yeah, it did make me just stop playing abruptly, which was a little bit of a shame, but I don't really care because at that point, I think I was 25 hours in, starting to feel a little bit of fatigue with the game, mostly because of a slight lack of enemy variety. I kind of felt like I'd fought all the big chaps 5 times over, and I was feeling a little bit of, I was kind of starting to walk around them when I saw them in the distance. If I'd fought 17 of the big ape troll looking guys, I was kind of I don't really want to engage in another 10-minute battle with one of these chaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of jumping to the end of my entire experience with Dragon's Dogma, so let's back up a little bit and talk about I don't know, the beginning?
Yeah. I will say, just as a mild summary to set the tone, I would say I actually kind of loved this game.
Nice.
From start to finish.
Yeah.
More than I anticipated, and I agree that there is a certain point where you, the enemy variety especially, really sort of catches up to the game and takes away a certain amount of desire to fight things. But all the way through, I was kind of super engaged with it and fascinated by its oddness, and ended up really, really enjoying the entire time with it. And I also ended up putting double the playtime you put into it. I think you put 25, 27, 28 hours or something. Yeah. So I think I finished it with 53 hours or something. It took an entire month to beat.
Yeah, that's a good length.
But yeah, the beginning is a good place to start as any, because that's sort of what I was thinking as well. It's just it very quickly reveals its craziness.
Yeah.
I think that opening long tutorial walk to the center town of Vernworth is a really great sort of intro to the game, because you get sort of distracted just enough, but it's a really linear corridor you're on, and they do a good job of introducing you to a lot of its strange things. And I think the point 40 minutes in where the game clicked with me was there was a ladder and a pawn, one of my only pawn, I think my main pawn, who was not called main pawn. She said, "Oh, there's a ladder there, if only we could reach it." And I climbed up on a hill opposite the ladder and grabbed her and chucked her across the gap to the ladder, and she kicked the ladder down, and I climbed up the ladder, and I was like, oh, this game's kind of super cool.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to summarize, but I think the best thing about Dragon's Dogma is it has like a very like tactile, emergent feeling world.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I don't know, it feels very immersive through like just little things here and there. It's hard to quantify specifically what makes Dragon's Dogma 2 feel like Dragon's Dogma 2. But it has a really, I don't know, unique feel to it. It's like slow and plodding at times, but in a way which feels purposeful. I don't know. I'm struggling to put it into words, but I think the most profound and specific gameplay design decision is how the game treats fast travel and how it like deals out the ability to fast travel. And I feel like that's something that gaming has really lost. I mean, the last game we talked about, or at least in the Tower episode, we talked about Starfield.
Yeah,
and my biggest complaint of Starfield was that traveling around and journeying from A to B had been basically mitigated, and that is how adventures happen and stories happen. Yeah. And Dragon's Dogma 2 turns fast travel into essentially a currency. It's not super rare, but it's rare enough where you want to be a little frugal with how you use them. And more often than not, I just kind of wanted to walk from A to B anyway.
Because interesting, weird things happen. Right?
Yeah.
And you get distracted, and that's like the entire appeal of an open world game to me.
Yeah, but it's also not just about stuff happening between A and B. I think the map is really well designed in a way where traveling becomes like a platforming, not really a puzzle, but like a problem to solve sometimes. Like you'll go the wrong way and a bridge is being destroyed by a troll and you've got to figure out how to get from A to B. And it kind of has like a little bit of like Death Stranding and sometimes Zelda energy, the newer Zeldas.
Yeah.
And I just feel like some games get that and some games really, really don't seem to understand that. And it's quite encouraging to see more and more games across the years start to understand that just traveling around and figuring out how to get to B from A is in itself like a bit of a problem to solve and just really fun. Even if it's slow, even if it takes like 45 minutes to walk somewhere, it just makes the journey feel more immersive. And yeah, it just does something to my brain which feels satisfying to start walking and know you got to get to B and you do it yourself without any sort of game magic. And it's a small thing, but it's really effective.
I just had like a weird thought about the fact that all the games that are good about that, about the fact that traversal is part of the game, they're all Japanese open world games.
Oh,
and
yeah, they are.
Death Stranding is actually a really interesting and accurate comparison to a lot of Dragon's Dogma 2, where just the act of getting through the world is compelling gameplay because you have to pick a route and figure it out, and then you hit an obstacle and you're like, oh, like you said, the bridge is gone. Well, I could probably do this crazy jump, or I could like let a harpy grab me and carry me over, or I can find a different route. I think we've talked about it many times. It's just the best open world games to me are the ones that let you I just like being left alone in the open world and let me wander and enjoy the act of being in the world.
Yeah.
And let that be an appeal to the world. And open world games have really gotten away from that. And it was interesting, because Starfield was the exact opposite of that.
God.
And funny enough, the game Dragon's Dogma 2 the thing I thought about most playing Dragon's Dogma 2 is this is how I felt playing Skyrim. Where there's this sense of I'm gonna walk to the other town, and it's gonna take a while, and I'm gonna fight a bunch of weird giant creatures, and do a ton of different caves, and have odd encounters along the way, and also just have a bunch of downtime where you're just walking and enjoying the scenery and the music and the quiet. And Dragon's Dogma 2 is kind of that. That's the whole game in a lot of ways.
It's the best part of the game, that's for sure.
It's definitely the best part, yeah. And like you said, fast travel, I think part of the reason I had a big gap in playtime for a while was I didn't find the, what's it called? The port stone, port crystal in Vernworth. I didn't find that until I was 14 hours into the game. I just never walked around the back part of it. So every single time I had to go somewhere, I had to walk all the way there and walk all the way back. And it was kind of a huge pain in the ass, but it was also fun.
Yeah.
It's just nice to walk around and go out on an adventure and get sidetracked, and that was really the main draw that kept me coming back over and over again. It was just like, I don't know what I'm going to find out this way. And most of the time, it wasn't so much that you found interesting things, sometimes for sure, but it was just more that like that act of picking a spot and then 2 hours later you're not even anywhere near there. That just was fun all the way through for me. And you really don't get that very often in games anymore.
No, you don't. Do you want to move on to combat?
Sure.
I really like the combat in this game. When I first started playing around with it, I thought it was a bit like messy and clumsy. And it is messy and clumsy.
It is, yeah.
But I changed from finding that a bit off-putting to weirdly finding it endearing after like 5 hours or so. And the pawn system in the game, where you have like 3 little buddies traveling around with you, the pawns are like, they're powerful, they're competent.
Yeah.
And it creates this almost Monster Hunter type feel where you don't even feel like the main character in the game. You just feel like part of a foursome that's going around. You feel like a team and a group. And that's like a really unique feel to combat, not to feel like the main dude outside of like non-multiplayer games. And yeah, I liked it. I would say like my mages in my group were probably bigger damage dealers than me. They were healing more than me. I was probably like the 3rd best DPS guy in the group at times. But I was always doing my part, jumping on the dude, putting out. It just felt like a team game, but with NPCs. And some of those NPCs are from like other players' games, which is a thing we can like get into at a different point. Yeah. And also, all of the moves, not all of the moves, but a lot of the moves later on in the classes as they progress, they're very like bombastic, over the top, and silly in a way.
Yeah, they're cool.
Which is super goofy and playful. The game has like enough of a goofy physics ragdoll thing going on where you have comical moments of getting yourself flung off a cliff, or the same happens to an enemy. And yeah, it just treads this balance of chaos, a little bit messy, a little bit funny and silly, but there's enough variance for it to be fun. And yeah, if it wasn't for my initial complaint earlier on of enemy variety, I would have been pretty happy to just keep fighting stuff all the way through, maybe for like as long as you played the game as well.
Yeah, I think the sort of slight counterbalance I found to the lack of enemy variety is the fact that the like combat and physics engine is interesting all the time, and so like fighting on a cliff edge is like terrifying, and there's a lot more of those steep drop-offs in that sort of southern desert area of the map as well, and like the fact that there's no lock-on is really interesting and really deliberate, because it encourages that sloppiness where you like sometimes you just miss, and but that's okay because it just feels appropriate for the world, because you also have 3 other people that are also helping you, which makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Normally that sort of stuff, like the sloppiness and the lack of lock-on and things like that, would bug me, but the like fundamental feel of movement and attack is good. The abilities are interesting, and the sloppiness just works for that whole world, and it adds this layer of comedy to every fight as well. Because like there are some very like laugh out loud hysterical moments just in combat from dumb shit happening. And I really enjoyed. I never really got tired of like the crawling around on the big dudes and them like being on one foot, being like, oh, I'm gonna fall over, and then you knock them off, or like the fact that I got into a griffin fight and was on its back when it took flight, and it flew all the way back to its nest on the other side of the map, and I like rode it all the way there, and that's just like you don't get that in games at all. You don't get this like. I think the main problem with a lot of open world games now is they're very predictable, and they're very like not just checklisty, but like combat wise and interactions and all these things. Like you're on the ground, you're fighting guys, and you're doing a map checklist, and like that's the game. Whereas Dragon's Dogma just doesn't have any of that, and every single time you get into a fight, especially with the big guys and especially with the flying guys, you just like never really know where it's going to end up, and that's what makes it exciting all the way through.
I think for like combat systems sometimes miss elements which create randomness. Because the unpredictability is where, like, Twitter clips and random stories come through with your friends where X happened, and your friends haven't seen that happen before because it wasn't scripted. It was just some bizarre causality thing where a tree fell down here and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, some modern games just don't have the ability for any stuff like that to happen, organic emergent moments. And yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2 has some bizarre things happen because its physics engine just allows for a little bit of hilarity. And even though I got a little bit bored of fighting X and Y over and over again, I still have like a lot of unique and hilarious moments which I couldn't replicate if I wanted to.
And those are the types of sandboxes that are they're just always the most entertaining to me. Like, yeah, it just allows for unique moments that feel cinematic and are cinematic, but are also unique to you, the individual player, not to just the game. Where it's like, I know I had dozens of things that happened that were, that you never saw. And you saw all your own unique, like, weird things happen.
Yeah.
And that's it just makes for a way more entertaining and engaging experience. Instead of just like, if you played through all of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you would have had the exact same experience I had.
Yeah.
And this was like, we had very diverging experiences, and that's cool.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
It is. And I'm sure it's really hard to do.
Without making the game explode, yeah. Just a small point, but I really like that you can quite freely switch classes and play around with whatever combat style you want. Again, that kind of mirrors back what Elden Ring allowed you to do, where I think previously From Software games were a lot more locked down. And yeah, I don't have much else to say, but I wish that old way would just be retired universally. It's just more fun to be able to experiment with the combat systems the game has, without having to play the game like 4 times. Like, I don't want to play Dragon's Dogma 2 4 times, no offense, but being able to play with every class pretty freely that should just be in all games. I just think it's more fun.
100%, yeah. And like, each class plays really differently.
Yeah.
It was interesting to dabble. Like, I started as a thief, and then I switched to someone else briefly, and I was like, oh, they don't have a dash. And of course they don't, because it doesn't make sense for, like, a sword guy to be able to dash around.
Yeah.
That's another part of the game that I really like as well, is that there's so much stuff in it that I know I never saw or never figured out. And some people rightfully find that frustrating, but I really like that. I really like in Baldur's Gate 3, I know there's a billion things I didn't see, and part of me is like, I never want to replay that game because, like, that experience was the experience, and I'm fine with having missed a bunch of stuff. And when I beat Dragon's Dogma 2, I looked through the achievements that I hadn't unlocked, and there were references to things in those achievements that I'm just like, I literally don't even know what this means.
Yeah.
And I played 50 hours, not like I have no idea. And I just sort of like knowing that there's all these weird things in the game that I never saw, even though I felt like I was really thorough.
Yeah.
And that applies to the vocations as well. I have no idea where you get some of the vocations.
Yeah, me neither.
And I had to look up Mystic Spearhand because I just wanted to play as him. And that's kind of cool. And I understand people being frustrated by it, but it's just nice. I like not seeing everything. It's okay to not see everything. It adds a sense of mystery.
Yeah, the completionist part of my brain, maybe just because I don't have as much time as I used to, but I've really weirdly started to have an affinity for missing content. I know that sounds weird because we're paying for these games, but it makes the world feel, I don't know. I remember I've always regretted the way I played Elden Ring, which was I would like explore an area and then I would get out a really thorough wiki guide of a map.
Right.
And I would like systematically do all the dungeons. And I kind of regret that because I wish I just like very naturally played the game and just, what I saw was what I saw and it was my playthrough. Yeah. My brain was a bit like completionist because I want to see every boss, but I've just come to learn that it's more satisfying to have your journey and just be immersed as the main character. You find what you find, and if you miss stuff, that's because you didn't go there. And I don't know, to me that feels more like a unique journey than being yet another dude who 100%ed like Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah, I agree. And I wish more games, again, you understand why, like, most games are designed for you to beat and to see everything. Like Spider-Man and Starfield were good examples of that. Well, Spider-Man especially. It's like that game is meant to be 100%ed in like 30 hours and everyone can do everything and see everything. And that's fine. And it's super satisfying. But in the long term, it's more fun and engaging to me when I know there's tons of stuff I never understood or saw. You're not going to see everything in your life. So, fuck it. Enjoy the journey.
Just want to quickly talk about the pawn system. What a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's like a quite innovative strand-like system.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Is the word like asymmetrical multiplayer or something, or is that something completely irrelevant?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, yeah.
I didn't know anything about it going into the game.
No, yeah.
And it also doesn't actually have like a large impact on things. It's just kind of like there and interesting and weird and like fresh and new.
Yeah.
I just would go into the menu, the pawn hub, and just be like, what? Why did they make this? It's cool. It doesn't really do a lot. But I guess like seeing a huge swath of like character creation things made by different players is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. A lot of strange ones, I will say, in specific ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. It's an interesting idea. It didn't have a huge like effect on gameplay. It didn't change the way I like picked characters. But okay, cool. I like it. You know?
Yeah,
I don't know what to say.
It felt mostly like another just element of like, it's customizing it for you, you know, that sort of thing. I think the one complaint I have about the pawn system is I wish it was easier for them to die, basically. Because I will say, like, I definitely burned through a fair number of them in the last, like, 10 hours or so. But, like, I rolled with one pawn who I loved, Ultra Pawn. He walked up to me on the street, and I rolled with him for, like, I think in-game I had him for 35 in-game days, which is, like...
Damn, how do you not, like, was it not under-leveled?
Well, yeah, that was the thing. And so I was like, oh, it's going to be sad when he dies, you know? It'll be a bummer. But he never died. And mainly because they really aggressively like will teleport the pawns to you. Even if they like fall off a cliff, they still get teleported back up. I wish they didn't do that. If they fall in water, they will immediately die, but that's really hard to do until the second half of the game.
Yeah.
And so yeah, at a certain point I was like level 35 or 40 and he was level 16, I think. I'm like, well, I have to just dismiss you. And I don't want to dismiss you, but I have to because you're so low level.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had that like tragic moment, you know, of like, oh, Ultra Pawn finally died. Now I have to go search someone else. But instead I just fired him.
Like when you lose a horse in Red Dead or Breath of the Wild, that type of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
The whole experience is like a little bit Eurojank. And then there's this like always online multiplayer hybrid thing. And it's like really interesting and new. Like I've never seen an RPG do that, and it feels out of place because it feels like technologically like ahead of a lot of things and like smart and advanced, and like that juxtaposition is really bizarre. I don't know what else to say about the pawn system. I didn't find it like mechanically that interesting, but just to have these fleeting moments of seeing like bizarre character creation that's been done by another player, it's just like really cool.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just like I'm like baffled by it, as you can tell.
It is. It's very bizarre, and at times, weird. A lot of the times, it's like really, you know, it's a video gamey thing, especially because like there's a ton of writing and voice acting for the pawns. It's really impressive, actually. But every now and then, you'll get the like, indeed, you are correct. You know, this like really like, and they repeat these lines sometimes, and it's just like the cracks show, and you're like, oh right, these are just like weird, sort of janky AI characters that were created by someone else. But it's a super unique system.
All right, is it time to go into the part of the game which I think is shit?
I'll just say one other thing. I really liked how the world itself looked. Just like visually.
Yes.
It's like the art style and everything. It's like a very just natural and sort of boring looking, but in a way that really works, I think. And their vistas and their like sense of scale and distance are really, really nice.
Yeah.
And it's just, I like a big airy open world game like that where you can see all the way. Oftentimes I was surprised at how good it looked when running around.
Yeah.
That was just a random side note to mention. But yeah, I'm curious because you sort of just like, I don't know if this is where you're going, but you just sort of like stumbled into beating it, right?
Yeah. So first of all, I thought the main quest in this game was really shit.
Well, yeah. I have no idea what happened in it.
And I thought a lot of the quest design was really shit as well. It's most bad for me at the beginning half of the game. I thought all of the castle-based quests, the stealth quests, oh my god,
I forgot
the prison
about those
quests,
things.
they're incomprehensibly bad. Like
I agree.
I understand the parameters they're working with here. Just don't design quests like that. Because further on in the game, there's quests which are much more curated to what the game can do, where you're like, go into a cave, kill a bunch of monsters, talk to a guy and come out. Yeah. Just play with the template you have. Don't try and like mold the game to like gameplay mechanics the game doesn't even have. You don't have stealth mechanics. You can't even sneak. So why
you can't
are
crouch.
the stealth missions? They're so bad.
I don't know. They are terrible.
I will say the second half of the game, when you get to Battao, I do think the quests get better, they get more interesting, and they get less like mechanically strange. But at that point, the story of the main quest just gets incomprehensible to me.
Yeah.
Which is really weird because the first half of the game is quite like a grounded political drama type thing. And then it turns into Final Fantasy 18 in a way which I just really didn't like. And yeah, let's get into what happened in my playthrough and what happened. All right. So first of all, I just want to say that during the first half of the game, you're doing the royal quest line where you're trying to disprove that someone is the heir to some dragon throne. I can't remember. And as you're doing that quest line, as you get near the end of it, the guy you're talking to, Captain Something, gives you this like warning. He's like, are you sure you want to progress to this thing? Once you do this, you can't go back. So I made sure to clean up everything before I did that. You do the ceremonial quest thing where a story thing happens. But nothing really actually changed after that quest. It didn't feel like a moment of no return. But regardless, that planted the idea in my head that this game would at least warn you if you were going to go past a point of no return. Most games do in pretty much all RPG, in the whole RPG genre. And this game flirted with the idea that it would do that. So I accidentally beat the entire game because I didn't know that I was going past a point of no return. And I wasn't anywhere near ready to finish the game. I had only done like the north and a little bit of the southwest, where Battao is. And yeah, I hadn't gone to the northwest, at all. And you told me there's a bunch of cool stuff up there. I hadn't gone to like the east. And yeah, I was having a good time. Like, enemy variety was probably like my only big problem. I would say a lot of the side quest design is actually better than main quest because it's like less ambitious and just tells you to go to A, like from A to B, and the stuff between the natural gameplay stuff is just like fun. But yeah, I rolled the credits by accident, and then somehow I ended up going like back in time and stabbing myself, and then the entire world changed. This is obviously mild spoiler territory. I won't specify what the world change is, but I didn't like visually how the world had changed. It wasn't ugly, I just liked the previous design, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know what was going on with the mechanics of the world. I traveled back to Battao, I talked to some people, I did this like long quest, and I was playing as the warrior class, and I was getting attacked by a bunch of these stony lizards, and my sword was just bouncing off of them, and my like pawn party wasn't set up to deal with them, and I died, and I was like, whatever, man, I died. The checkpoint system in this game is usually not that strict, but there was like this weird cutscene of me by an ocean, like falling onto my knees, and then I went all the way back to the beginning of the world change, like an hour and a half back. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that entire sequence of stuff again. It was like an hour and a half.
Like sets you back to the beginning of that day.
I quit the whole game because at that point I was a little fatigued by enemy variety. I was still intrigued by where things are going to go, but I didn't like the visual change of the world. And I don't know, it was just such a bizarre sequence of events where I went from so in to kind of forcibly out. And yeah, it kind of sucked, dude, because I wanted to explore the rest of the game.
I will say that, like, if I hadn't had your warnings, I probably would have done that same quest as well, because it just is like collect the Regalia sword or whatever.
Yeah, or take it somewhere, deliver the sword or something. Yeah,
so like I was like, that was my next quest, and then I put another 20 hours into the game, basically, right? Like, and I was... Like, I remember, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this quest. And then I remember seeing your message, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I won't do that. And I'm glad I didn't, because, like, there was a ton of awesome stuff that I encountered in those last 20 hours. Sure. And it's, it sucks that, like, the game's esotericness just sort of, like, just put a fucking warning message up. Like, it's not complicated.
Especially when it did earlier in the game.
Right. It's really unfortunate as well, because there's a lot of really cool stuff, in that sort of the southern half of the map. And honestly, I thought the end game chunk, while it definitely was a bit tedious, as a sort of finale, you know, going into it properly, let's say, where it's like, I've done everything, I'm ready, it felt like a proper, interesting finale. And there's like 4 unique boss fights in there that are new enemies. I mean, they're variants of dragons, but they like are radically different, or, you know, fairly different. Visually, and to have all unique attack patterns, and those were cool. And so, like, the end game, I enjoyed the end game. I thought it was a little tedious, but it also was only like maybe three hours or so for me, because they give you like an absolute shitload of fairy stones, and they're just like, just fast travel everywhere. It's fine. You know, we know you're ready to be done. That sucks.
Yeah, I might replay the game if there is a big expansion out. I feel like if I just mainline the story and maybe avoided some of the duplicate quests I've already done, you know, avoided redoing some of the side quests, I could probably get through the game in like 15 hours, or get back to where I was in like 15 hours.
Yeah.
So if
I would imagine.
If there's an expansion out, I've got classes I never touched, areas I never went to. And the game's not very difficult, so I'd probably be underleveled if I skipped through the side content, but I'm sure I'd be fine. I could just become a mage, and I would be unkillable. That's all I got.
I think by and large the game, the like esoteric nature of a lot of the game is a positive, but there were definitely some times, like you just said, where it's like, please just be a little more upfront. But for the most part, it works to create that sense of mystery and intrigue. And, you know, like I said, I know that there's a billion things I missed, and that's fun. It's less fun when it's the rest of the game, in your case.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Also, I think the beggar quest is hilarious.
I fucking hate that quest.
That is so stupid and so disrespectful of your time that it's just kind of amazing.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it is terrible, but it was kind of hilarious.
It is terrible.
Yeah, overall, I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it all the way through, and
yeah, I had a good time. Bit of a sour ending, but you know.
Yeah, that's really sucks.
It is what it is, man. It's a weird fucking game.
Yeah. I've for so many years I've been very curious about Dragon's Dogma. Same. You know, it's been like, it's sort of like one of those weird YouTuber games, right? Where it's like, this game is so good, but it kind of sucks, or it really sucks in like the first game's case. I don't know. Thing. Yeah. So it was really nice to play it and get it. Like, I got it. Like, I understand why people love that first game. This game feels crazy in 2024. A version of this game 12 years ago must have been wild. On the 360, you know, like right after Skyrim comes out, and like at the end of the 360 gen, when it's just like linear first-person shooter city and Gears of War and BioShocks. Yeah. Here's Dragon's Dogma, and it's like this janky, insane person game. It must have been crazy, you know.
Yeah, for the only thing I want to say is I hope there's a Dragon's Dogma 3. I think this game sold pretty well.
Yeah, I think it did, yeah. Yeah, I hope they make another one and they take it further. Because it sounds like this one, like we said at the beginning, was fairly iterative and more of just like a sidestep sort of improvement. Yeah. Not like a really taking the concept further. So it would be neat if they had another new sort of Capcom weirdo game franchise out.
Clean up some of those rough edges.
Yeah.
The tower.
I'm looking for ranking. I was going to say I don't think this will take long, but I actually myself still am not really sure where to put it.
For me, it's very clear, but I want to hear where you would put it.
I don't know, man. Like, I'm looking, and I'm not sure. I honestly am not sure.
For me, it's above Final Fantasy 16. I don't think it's better than God of War Ragnarok. I know God of War Ragnarok has a weird, stinky story, but I mean, Ragnarok is still just like such a well put together product.
It is.
I know you have a weird relationship with Ragnarok.
I was almost going to say I liked it more than Spider-Man.
Yes,
and
Spider-Man 2 is so crazy, dude.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know you're right that, like, Horizon, Spider-Man, and Ragnarok are all, like, they're better assembled games, but I look at them, and even Horizon, which I am sort of poking at replaying on the PC, and it's just like the format is so boring to me.
I know. We just went on like a long spiel about, how Dragon's Dogma is like this innovative format when it comes to moving around a game, and I'm saying it's below all these like first-party Sony things. But,
yeah.
I think the combat is better in all three of these Sony games. I think obviously visually it's better. I think story-wise they're all better, even Ragnarok. And I don't know how high I want to boost up Dragon's Dogma because it took on some like really cool gameplay initiatives.
Yeah.
It's hard to rank those versus like kind of like objectively polished good stuff in video games. All preference, obviously.
Of course, yeah. I would put it above Ragnarok because I just fundamentally had a better time with Dragon's Dogma 2. Like I straight up thought the combat in Dragon's Dogma 2 was more fun to me than Ragnarok. And again, I still have not figured out why Ragnarok's combat was so frustrating to me. Because I fucking love that first game's combat.
Ragnarok's combat is so good, man. It's so good.
Yeah. I'm just talking about like my pure like enjoyment factor of the whole picture for me. Dragon's Dogma 2 is above Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. And probably above Spider-Man.
Right.
But
there is some objectivity on the tower, though, remember?
I agree. Like, I know what you're saying. Like, I completely know where you're coming from. Because, like, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a fucking weird, janky mess. But I find that very endearing and very enjoyable.
I agree.
Yeah. And, like, part of me just wants to encourage more of that.
I mean, if it went above Ragnarok, it's going one place above where I think it should go.
Yeah.
We could meet in the middle and go beneath Spider-Man 2 and above Ragnarok.
I'm okay with that.
I disagree. It's better than Ragnarok, but this is a two-person decision.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't necessarily disagree. Like, I think Ragnarok is probably the better game in pretty much every single fathomable way.
Yeah.
But it's just that, like, the like, personal tilt, that, like, I just liked it more. I just liked Dragon's Dogma 2 more.
And we did just, like, rant and rave about structure and, like, Sony formulaic stuff versus this type of thing. So maybe if I was to put it below all three AAA Sony things, it's, like, a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Hypocritical?
Hypocritical, yeah.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I'm gonna place that as like a vote for what I want the future of gaming to. I want like a merge of both. I want production values of God of War, combat of God of War, with like world design and physicality and approach of Dragon's Dogma 2.
And I think like Spider-Man above it, there's a reason for that, and it's because it's just like it just goes so hard for everything.
Crazy.
And Horizon above both because like they still have that world design, enemy design, combat, visual advantage.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. That feels like a good, like meeting in the middle type situation.
Yeah.
A middle ground.
Number 7, which also is pretty much the exact middle of the tower.
It's a respectable place. Very respectable. Number 7.
Yeah. I'll take messy and weird over Starfield every single day.
I agree there.
And Star Wars. Both the Star games. Like,
all the Star games.
I'll take Dragon's Dogma's weird bullshit 10 times a month over those experiences, let's put it nicely.
Yeah. I think that's it for today. A single game.
A one-off. Kind of a long chat, honestly.
It was.
For a weird game. It would have been interesting to rank Rebirth, because, like, me personally, I'm still not even sure where I'd put it on this list.
Well, theoretically, where would you have done it as a solo placement? Little bonus content,
I think it would just be right above 16 for me. And below Ragnarok. Because if they hadn't forced a generic, boring, bloated open world into that game, it would have been like high. Like Spider-Man 2, like up there. Because if it was just the linear, fun nonsense, it's so good at that stuff. But like the open world is such a drag in that game. So yeah, I would put it just below, like between Ragnarok and Final Fantasy 16. But it is so much better than Final Fantasy 16 in every single way. It's unbelievable. Final Fantasy 16, I feel like, should go down on this list.
Wow.
Like in hindsight, like I would put Dead Island above Final Fantasy 16 at this point because that game was so boring. Yeah, you want to?
Yeah, I love Dead Island 2. I'm a defender of that game.
Fuck it. Final Fantasy 16 is going down one notch.
Damn.
Because honestly, like when we did our top 10 of the year, and I was like, oh my god, I completely forgot Final Fantasy 16 existed, and I played all of it.
Yeah.
It was so missing all of the fun that you want from Final Fantasy, and Rebirth has so much of that stuff. There you go. Dead Island 2, number 9.
Yeah, and a theoretical ranking of Rebirth, like a ghost of it.
Yeah, it would have been, and now it would have been between Ragnarok and Dead Island 2. It would have been at number 9.
But yeah, I don't know what's next for the tower.
No, we'll figure it out.
We will figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apart from that, guys, thank you for listening. If you played Dragon's Dogma 2, let us know what you thought down below. It's a weird one. Yeah, it kind of spurred some interesting discussion. And I can see it being very polarizing, with people having very different opinions. And I think when the review cycle came out, it was a little bit polarizing in different ways, which was cool.
And I can definitely see someone picking this game up thinking they're going to have like a predictable fantasy game experience and having a terrible time with it.
Yeah, definitely.
But like I want more, give me more 80 to 85 games that are weird and divisive, because they're much more interesting that way.
Yeah.
The universal praise for games just makes a boring game, honestly.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, next time we'll be talking, hopefully, about another weird game.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Apart from that, thanks for listening, guys, and we will see ya when we see ya.
Bye.
Bye.